Hi, my name's Phil and I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss Boris Johnson's threat to trigger a general election in order to bat away leadership challenges in light of the latest news that there will now be a squeaky bum by-election facing them in the not too distant future. On the face of it, this could ramp up the pressure on Johnson quite a bit. But perversely, could it actually work in his favour? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, the Tory Party is collapsing. It's done this before, of course, and recovered. It will never collapse completely because there's too much money keeping it in place. It will never collapse under its own weight. The billionaires need it. You know, when it tears itself apart, as it's doing at the moment, the collapse won't actually happen without sustained pressure from the opposition. Can the opposition finally exert that pressure now, as it did 25 years ago? Just over a week ago, while the Mail on Sunday were trying to attack women but inadvertently sparked a push for greater equality, they also had another article published. It was a threat that Boris Johnson could trigger an early general election to, as they put it, see off his rivals. The principle's straightforward enough. Tory MPs don't care about Johnson's law-breaking. They don't care about his dereliction of duty, his threat to national security, his general inability to govern. They knew all of those things when they made him Prime Minister. All they care about is winning elections. They made him leader, not just because they thought he could win elections. And to begin with, they were right. Power without principle, that's what they stand for. And if you didn't believe it before, it seems undeniable now. As long as he is going to win them the election, they will stand by him. But this seems to no longer be the view. It hasn't been the view for some time. Boris Johnson is not an electoral asset. In fact, he's an electoral albatross. So much of a drain is he on the party's political fortunes, many Conservative candidates for this week's local elections are not even putting the name of the party on their campaign literature. If you didn't know better, you'd think these people were independents. So Tory MPs need to get rid of him. The problem is there's no obvious successor who would stand a good chance of succeeding where Johnson will now almost certainly fail. Hence they've left Johnson in place. And so long as the damage was centred on Johnson, there was no rush to act. The election needn't be until the start of 2025 now that the Fixed Terms Parliament Act has been repealed. So wait a bit longer until a successor emerges. But the damage is now spreading to the rest of the party. Leaving it much longer might mean poisoning the well for Johnson's replacement. Some Tory MPs think that they have to act sooner rather than later. I don't know how many. But there is a feeling it could be enough to depose him, maybe this summer. So Johnson threatens a general election. But this would be madness when his party is behind Labour in the polls and he personally is behind Starmer in approval ratings. But that's the point. It is a tactic of mutually assured destruction. Johnson knows that his MPs only care about winning their seats at the next election, so he threatens to trigger an election when they are weak, guaranteeing that many MPs will lose those seats, including those in the marginals right now. And as most of his opponents are in those marginal seats, these are the people he has to scare off. But could he trigger a general election? See, there still needs to be a vote in Parliament, but with the Fixed Terms Parliament Act gone, there only needs to be a simple majority now. Mind you, that's all there was in 2019. There was always a way around the Act. But all Johnson needs to do is get a majority of MPs to support it, and he can have a general election. Well, surely Conservative MPs would vote it down, because triggering a general election would be madness for them. Some would, yes. But Labour and the Lib Dems would vote for it. The SNP might as well. I'm not sure. The politics for them is more nuanced. They may vote for it, they may just abstain. But there are some Conservative MPs who would vote for it. Why? Well, some would do so out of loyalty to Johnson. Some might see personal advantage. If they think their seat is safe, there is advantage to be had in risking an election this year. Because if they win, great, 5 more years in power. In addition, Starmer would probably have to resign, so they get rid of the first Labour leader they've actually feared for many years. If they lose, leave Labour with the shit they've left behind. Brexit is not politically easy for anyone to fix right now, and it's also early enough in the mess that the Conservatives can blame Labour for what is still to come later this year and into 2023. And then they can bounce straight back to power a few years later. So I believe Johnson could absolutely get the numbers, as there may be quite a few Tory MPs who see a win-win for an election this year, even if it's not a majority of them. So then we come on to the question of, would Johnson do it? Almost certainly. We can't be sure, of course, but Boris Johnson has no regard for the Conservative Party. We know Theresa May put party ahead of country, but Boris Johnson doesn't care about either. The only thing Boris Johnson cares about is Boris Johnson. Johnson didn't become a Tory politician because he's a Tory. He did it because the Conservative Party was the only vehicle capable of carrying his megalomaniacal ambitions to fruition. That's all the party is for him. It's a wagon big enough to carry his ego. If it won't serve that purpose, there's no point in the wagon. He would absolutely set fire to his government and his party to protect his own interests. So whether or not he would do this, which we cannot know, the threat is absolutely credible. It would be believed. So then we come into the new by-election. So the Conservatives were already facing a by-election in Redwall seat Wakefield. And that's going to happen quite soon, because the disgraced MP has now resigned. So we can probably expect it in June or July. Well, with Neil Parish resigning as well, there's now going to be another by-election, this time in Tiverton and Honiton. Nice, safe, rural Tory seat, just like North Shropshire. In fact, from an initial scan, very much like North Shropshire. Except North Shropshire was a much safer Tory seat. But North Shropshire was lost, wasn't it? Yes. And it was lost because people were pissed off at Boris Johnson, wasn't it? Yeah. And people are still pissed off at Boris Johnson, aren't they? Yeah. And there's another similarity as well. Although Labour was second in Tiverton and Honiton, just like with North Shropshire, it is not a seat Labour are likely to take. It's essentially a Conservative area. You know, those Tory voters won't flip to Labour. They mistrust Labour, mistrust socialism. But just as in North Shropshire, they might flip to the Lib Dems. This is a rerun of the North Shropshire by-election. And there's no reason for both this and Wakefield to not be on the same day. They will absolutely be on the same day. So Labour can push Wakefield hard and ignore Tiverton and Honiton. The Lib Dems can push that one hard and ignore Wakefield. The Conservatives will have to put up a strong fight in both at the same time. They will have to fight on two fronts. Labour and the Lib Dems can concentrate on one. If the Conservatives lose both, and I'm not saying this is likely, but it is credible, if they lost both, that means two things. First, Starmer is recapturing the Red Wall. Polling already shows this, and this would be concrete proof. Wakefield has been marginal for a long time. Yes, it was Labour for a very, very long time, but it was marginal. It was always tight. You know, it has been for some considerable time now. There are much easier Red Wall seats for Labour to take back. Wakefield is a genuine test. It'll be tough, especially with Galloway supporting the Tories again. But it is winnable, and the stakes are high. Second, it will show that Johnson cannot even hold on to safe Tory seats. It will be the third safe Tory seat in a row that he has lost to the Lib Dems inside a year. Chesham and Amersham last year, North Shropshire the end of last year. This latest one, how could you not see results like that as Johnson losing both the so-called Red Wall and the so-called Blue Wall? It would be panic stations for the Conservatives. No seat would really be safe. You would think that would be the impetus to jettison Boris Johnson, if they hadn't already done so by then. Remember, you know, we may have seen a flashpoint over this week's local elections, although I'm not necessarily anticipating that. There's the Sue Gray report, that could come out before then, who knows. But could that result actually play into Johnson's hands? Assuming he's still in place then. Assuming he's still Prime Minister then. Wouldn't it prove that the Conservatives are on for a good hiding if a general election were to be fought this autumn? If so, then Johnson's threat to trigger an election could be more dangerous. Perversely, you know, if Johnson loses both by-elections, demonstrated that he's a serious electoral liability, it might actually strengthen his immediate position as Prime Minister. How mad is that? How mad is that? The fact that he could show that he could potentially lose the Conservatives 100, 150 seats, which would be cataclysmic. They wouldn't dare let him trigger a general election. But we don't know if it will come to such mad times. It's all just credible speculation right now. First step is seeing what happens in the local elections this week. Like I say, I do wonder if it's not just going to be an anticlimax in the end. We'll see. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. Maybe even click the join button if you'd like to be interested in memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.